if you wanted to make 3 concise points to American Jews, in points that would help them be of support to Israel, what would you tell them?
American Jews. So first of all, I'll tell them to...
Or Jews in diaspora,
Sure.
outside of Israel.
Jews in diaspora. So the first thing I would tell them is to be proud. Be proud of your Judaism. You are a member of a chain which lasted for 3,000 years, which has been through a lot. There's no question that the West today is shaped by biblical values, is shaped by Jewish values, and you have a beautiful tradition. There's nothing to be ashamed of, and you should be proud to be a Jew. Mm-hmm. That's point one. I think that has so many ramifications.
Can I build on that just for
Sure.
a moment? Yeah, because I feel that after October 7th, there's been a lot of talk about Jews waking up. And the wake up that I've seen, the largest wake up I've seen is Jews maybe wearing a Star of David, which is beautiful, and Jews pumping their fists and saying never again. But I do want to say that the real pride is when we are willing to do something which we haven't done until now, which may even feel uncomfortable. The more uncomfortable it feels, probably the more pride there is behind it, that is blatantly Jewish. So it's not just we stand for Jews, but I do something, even on an ongoing basis, whether it's a weekly basis or a daily basis, that is Jewish. It may not even be an announcement to the world or a pump of the fist in the street or yelling back at an anti-Semite. It may simply be me in my home every single morning saying a prayer. But doing that actually anchors me into my Jewish identity. And when I walk on the street then, I will walk with a straighter Jewish spine.
Right, and when you walk on stage with a straighter Jewish spine, if you don't say anything, people realize that. People can tell.
Excellent.
People can pick up subconsciously. Are you a person who walks with confidence or not?
And that's exactly what I want to convey. And every one of us that does that makes the collective Jewish spine straighter.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
I want to share a few anecdotes on that point before we get to the other 2 points for Jews. Right. Yeah. So first of all, be proud. And maybe just to share some anecdotes on this point. So as a Chabad rabbi and somebody who's been involved in Chabad's roving rabbis program, I get around a lot. So I've spent a good deal of time in France. And people ask, aren't you afraid to walk around in France as a Jew? And not as a Jew with a beard, as a Jew with a yarmulke, as a Jew with a black hat, with the whole Hasidic 9 yards. So I was once doing a rabbinic stint, teaching a little bit in a town in France, which is overrun by Syrian refugees. And people were asking, like literally you walk in the streets and you see loads of Syrian refugees panhandling for money. People were asking, you're not afraid, you're a Jew, walking around with your black hat and your beard, you're such an identifiable Jew, you're not afraid they're going to kill you? I'm like, no, just I do my thing. So I remember like every day I would walk from where I was staying to the synagogue, and I would see the Syrian refugees, and they would greet me with salam alaikum, peace be unto you, right? And I think that people just have a certain degree of respect when they see somebody who's being authentically Jewish. They have a degree of respect for that. Meaning, to add another anecdote, I've done a lot of work with Chabad on campus, Chabad's organization, which Rabbi Weinstein's brother is actually the engine behind. Yes. Yes. So, and Chabad on campus tries to share Judaism with Jewish students on campus everywhere, but not only Jews, meaning those who are looking, for connection to Judaism on campuses all around the world. You're going to add some other points.
I was just going to say, Chabad on campus does not try to give Judaism to Jews. Chabad on campus gives Judaism to Jews.
It gives. Very successfully. Very successfully.
They don't try anything.
Yes. Yes, they're the most dynamic force in campus Judaism today.
And our videographer here, Mark Smiler from Smiler Video, actually has 2 kids on campus today who are part of Chabad on campus.
Really? Which campus? Wow, very nice. Okay, good.
We'll see if this makes it into the cut.
It definitely should. Okay, but go Penn State. But be that as it may, right after October 7th, I had been invited. Well, maybe I won't say the name of the university, but I had been invited to spend a week at a very prominent Ivy League school. Which in this invitation, I think I was invited in July 2023. So meaning it was well before October 7th, was in the public consciousness. Be that as it may, I arrived on a Thursday. That Shabbat, there was a very a very widely publicized anti-Israel, pro-Palestine rally supporting October 7th, where a professor spoke about how he was exhilarated and energized by what the Hamas terrorists did. Now, I walked around campus with a bunch of young rabbinical students in our full rabbinic gear. We set up a table offering Jewish students tefillin and Shabbos candles. We played some Israeli music, and not one person came up to us and said a negative word. There's even a young woman who looked Islamic based on her dress, who greeted us kindly, right? So generally speaking, there was absolutely no negativity that we experienced. We saw Free Palestine graffiti, but when people saw proud Jews, that was something they respected, right? So point number one to the American Jews, be proud. Point number two.
Can I just say this before point number two?
Sure.
I just like to say this. People respect people who respect themselves. Period.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Point number two.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay, so point number two, right, which by the way, I think is one of the core ideas of Make Peace.
Yes.
If Israel has self-respect, then Israel will be respected.
Yes, when I taught the How Israel Wins seminar, I went very strong on that because I believe in that very deeply. It's the way you show up for yourself. You don't even need to, we don't need to convince anyone in the world. We need to convince ourselves.
Absolutely.
It's
true everywhere, in everything. In any dynamic, in business, relationships, be that as it may. Okay, right, so number one, be confident, be proud. Right, number two, educate yourself. And the importance of Jewish education and Jewish practice. I think that Jews on an individual level need to study the Torah, know what Torah has to say, engage in the mitzvot, and that will strengthen your Jewish connection. That will make you a more proud Jew. And also, a lot of Jews are just very confused about Israel, about Jewish identity. Yeah. If you actually study the Torah, and it can be for 5 minutes a day, study the daily Torah portion, look on Chabad.org, listen to Rabbi Weinstein's lectures, you'll become a more educated Jew, a more proud Jew, a more connected Jew. And mitzvot, engaging in the Jewish practices, will also connect you to your Jewish heritage. But I think a added point when it comes to education is that we have to be very concerned about Jewish children's education. Meaning we need to instill a certain sense of pride in our Jewish children. So if you're a parent, teach your kid Hebrew, send your kid to Hebrew school, teach them Torah, and it shouldn't be you shouldn't force it down their throat. It should be something that you love and say, this is important to me. This is something that I'm really passionate about, and it's something that I want to share with you because I love it so much. And if we educate young Jewish children, and if we connect them to Jewish practice, we're going to create generations of strong Jews. And there'll be strong Jews who will stand strong in Israel, who will support Israel, who will make it such that Israel does not need to go to war, because it will be so strong that its enemies will know you don't start off with Israel. But moreover, it will create Jews who will be paragons of ethical conduct around the world, Jews who will bring light to the world. There's something very, very powerful about the Jewish soul. The Jewish soul is currently wandering. The Jewish soul is never at rest. And the Kabbalistic texts teach us that if you have something that's very powerful, it can reach the highest of heights and the lowest of lows. And unfortunately, there have been cases where Jews did not engage in the best of behaviors, right? But had they engaged in Torah study, had they engaged in the practice of mitzvot and thereby cultivated fear of God, then I imagine they would have been forces for tremendous good and transformation in the world. So to remember that there's the Jewish spirit, and we have a lot of positivity we can bring. We should educate ourselves and also educate our children. If you don't have children, then educate the children in your community or take action to educate Jewish children somewhere in the world. And the final point I'd say is that, and this ties into what Rabbi Weinstein was saying about the Messianic era, there's a line in the Mishnah, in a very ancient Jewish text, which says that all the days of your life should be dedicated to bringing about the Messianic era. I'd say that in Hebrew. And the idea there being that we shouldn't have a passive orientation towards the world in general or towards our life. We shouldn't think that life is happening, but rather we need to take agency to create positive change, to bring about the Messianic era. Now, one thing I would add there, though, is that very often when people talk about change, they engage in discourse about things that they cannot change, things outside of the realm of their own ability, almost performative morality, we could say, right? So the change, the impact that you can start with is change in your own life. Change in the way that you interact with your family, with your coworkers, in your local community, and that can radiate out the change. So just to summarize those, right? Point number 1, be a proud Jew. Point number 2, educate yourself with Torah study and commitment to Jewish practice, and educate your children and the Jewish children everywhere. And finally, realize that you have agency and there's so much you can do to create positive change.